Have you ever dreamt of doing something so extraordinary that it seems to be unattainable? And have you ever thought that the things that seem to be unattainable most of the times are closer to us than we may think? My name is Alex Tienda. When I was a child, I dreamt about being a pilot. When I was a teenager, I got my pilot's license and I was able to fulfill my dream of flying. But it does not feel the same to pilot a civilian airplane as it does to experience the power and the maneuverability of a fighter jet. And although my intention was never to enlist in any air force, I have always had that immense desire of getting into the cockpit of a fighter jet, to ride the skies at top speed, to perform aerobatics, to fly upside down, and to put my body to the test against the intense G-forces. But of course, just like many of us, I have always thought that that was only a distant dream, until one day I started to search the internet and found a way to do it without the necessity of becoming an Air Force pilot or being a millionaire. So stay with me and watch this great video, because today I will share with you my experience of piloting a fighter jet, and I will also include all the details so that you can experience it as well. It was at this very moment, while I was upside down, that it became very clear to me that there are no unattainable dreams. However, before we get to this point, I first want to tell you a story. Imagine for a moment that this character is you, and this other guy is called Jimmy. Both are close friends, they studied together in college, and in one of their college trips, they suddenly end up in a bar in Moscow chatting with a Russian Air Force fighter pilot. Everything is all smiling and joking. The three of them get along very well, and in between jokes and beers, Jimmy and you convince the pilot to take you for a ride in a fighter jet. And even though you were just joking at the bar, it turns out that some days later the pilot contacts you and he later sneaks you into a Russian Air Force base. He then gets you up into an L-39 Albatros jet to give you both the ride of your lives. But this story, as crazy as it sounds, is real, and the characters to whom it actually happened were Philip and Flavio. They were two friends who were very enthusiastic about aviation, and after this impressive experience, they began looking for a way to turn this into something reachable and affordable for any person who loves aviation or just excitement. In 2004, they founded their company in Zurich, Switzerland, and they called it MiGFlug. MiG in honor to the iconic Soviet fighter jets, and Flug, which in German means flight. This small but very specialized company is dedicated to offering all of us the opportunity to be fighter jet pilots for one day. And when I learned about this, I knew that this was one of those dreams that I definitely needed to accomplish before I died. And I obviously still have a lot of time before that, but I still said to myself, well, let's get this thing done for once. The first thing I did was to go to their site at mikfluke.com. There they have all the information about the flight and experiences that they offer, and a list of all the cities where you can experience your flight, including options within the United States, Canada, Russia, and several European countries. As for the jets, they have many, including the MiG-15, MiG-29, Jet Provost, T-33, Hawker Hunter, Albatros L-29, and the Albatros L-39. In every one of them they offer different experiences. For instance, you can choose to take one flight for 20, 30, or 45 minutes doing aerobatics in an L-39, or formation flights on board of one of the planes of the Breitling team. You can simulate the experience of an air combat between two jets, fly at an altitude of 70,000 feet until the limits of space on board the MiG-29, or even float like the astronauts do in space, simulating the effects of zero gravity on board a special plane. With regard to the prices, there are many options, but the good news is that most of the experiences have prices that are quite reasonable and very affordable. For instance, the flight experience that I made in an L-39 costs $2,400, and even though to some it may sound like a lot, in perspective, we actually sometimes spend more money in other things. For example, assuming that every weekend you spend $50 at parties, it would take you 50 weeks or approximately 1 year to save the amount to pay for the flight of your life. Other examples are graduation trips, marriage gifts, anniversaries, your father turning 50 years old, etc. In all of these events, we many times spend more money in organizing and giving gifts than what it costs to have a once-in-a-lifetime experience. In fact, in the MiGFlug site they even have the option to buy a gift certificate, which I really recommend, especially if that special person is a lover of aviation and/or adrenaline. Now getting back to my flight, I chose the L-39 Albatros experience in Florida. I made my payment online, and Mikfluke contacted me to explain all the details about my flight, to answer any questions I had, and they gave me access to some pre-flight material so that I could get familiar with the airplane I would be flying. By now, obviously I was already very excited, but the real adrenaline I felt was when I was about to begin my journey to Florida. My journey began from my house in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I flew early in the morning and I enjoyed the dawn while approaching Mexico City, as I would be changing planes in this airport before continuing on with my next flight to the Orlando airport, and from there I would take a bus to Tampa, Florida.
Buenos días, Mini Markets. Estoy... ¡Wow! ¡No puedo creer! Hoy voy a volar en un avión de combate, es un jet, estoy muy emocionado, estoy bastante nervioso, no pude dormir en toda la noche, estuve despertando a cada rato y de hecho soñaba, no sé, me acuerdo más o menos que soñé que estaba como ya en el... no, estoy muy emocionado.
In fact, I was so excited that in contrast to all my other journeys, where I'm always missing my flight, on this occasion I arrived at the airport very early and I took advantage of those spare minutes to walk around through a plane exhibition that was happening right next to the hangar.
Baby, I'm not running around looking for nobody else. I've got one thing on my mind, I already hear the bells.
After admiring for a while these beautiful new planes and fantasizing about the idea of someday having my own plane, it was the time to fulfill another one of my fantasies and get ready for my spectacular flight in the jet. First, the uniform. These are very important to protect us from fire in case there is an emergency and I have to activate the ejection seat, but that is a very extreme case. So in our case, the main function of our uniform is to make us look pretty cool and badass. After putting on the uniform, I went to where the captain who would be taking me to fly was, and we sat down to do the flight briefing and talk about the maneuvers we would be doing. Now, it should be noted that in order to book this experience, it's not necessary to have a pilot's license, and any person can enjoy this ride as a passenger. Although in my case, the advantage of having a pilot's license was that during the flight I could perform some of the maneuvers and actually take the controls of the plane. Also, depending on your country registration license and the plane, you can also add your flying time to your pilot's logbook. Okay, now after the briefing, it was finally the moment to go outside the building and see our powerful aircraft.
Amigos, estoy súper emocionado, además tengo nostalgia. Me trae muchos recuerdos de cuando yo volaba, cuando yo pilotaba. Esta es la estrella del día, es un Albatros L39. Está impresionante, se ve increíble, estoy súper emocionado. Vamos a poner atención a lo que nos tienen que explicar.
The L-39 Albatros is a jet plane manufactured in the former Czechoslovakia as a training plane for the Soviet Air Force and for more than 30 other countries. There is also another version of this light attack aircraft with weaponry under the wings, but the plane that we will be flying today has, instead of missiles, extra fuel compartments and is one of so many L-39s around the world that have been bought by civilian pilots for recreational purposes. In total, more than 2,800 of these aircraft have been produced and is the most popular jet training aircraft in the world. In terms of its design, it has a jet engine in the back section of the plane with two semicircular air intakes at the sides and behind the cockpit, which seats two pilots. And each of them has an individual space that has all of the controls and instruments required to be utilized by either the front or the back pilot. Climbing into the plane and getting into the seat is quite tricky and requires a specific procedure, but once there, the excitement of looking directly at the instrument panel and the controls of the L-39 in front of me, it's indescribable. However, despite how excited we might be at this very moment, it is very important to pay very close attention to our captain's instructions, because we are now being told about all of the emergency procedures, including the activation of the ejection seat and parachute in case it is necessary to suddenly exit the plane during the flight. On the other hand, if you are a pilot, you will find it extremely interesting that the instrument panel in this plane is very similar to what we would find in any of the most popular civilian airplanes. Naturally, we have our standard instruments such as the altimeter, the attitude indicator, and vertical speed indicator, but we also have other interesting controls in the cabin such as the ejection handles between the legs, and we need to be very careful not to activate them by accident, because the result would be quite a spectacle.
¡Ay, qué emoción! Ok, oficialmente ya estoy en mi lugar de piloto en este Albatros L39. Está increíble, está impresionante y se siente... Es una sensación increíble el que estás amarrado a este asiento que tiene un paracaídas y tiene un sistema de eyección. Por lo pronto, pues bueno, estamos aquí muy emocionados ya con este avioncito. Vean nada más. Bueno, en este momento estamos encendiendo los motores y...
After starting the engine and verifying that the systems are all performing properly, we begin a roll along taxiway Alpha until the threshold of runway 18 left. And while we wait for the controller to give us the clearance for takeoff, we happened to see an Airbus from a local airline landing right in front of us, and I couldn't stop thinking about all the times that I have been inside of one of those planes, dreaming of being inside of one like this. But today was the big day, And this experience was just about to start. Around 11 a.m., the air traffic controller called us on the radio and we had our clearance for takeoff. We taxied to position ourselves on the runway and we began our takeoff run. The airport from which we took off is the St. Petersburg Clearwater International Airport, and it is a controlled airport in Class Delta airspace. That is also below the Class Bravo airspace of Tampa Airport, so in order to perform our aerobatics without breaking any rules, we firstly headed northwest into an area above the Clearwater Beach where there was not so much air traffic. On our way, we flew over the penthouse of Tom Cruise himself, and as a fun fact, besides being a fighter pilot in the movie Top Gun, my esteemed Thomas is also a real-life pilot. When we got to the Clearwater Beach area, things got much better. Our captain increased the throttle in our L-39, and it was at that moment when I really felt the adrenaline of flying in a fighter jet. At first, we made some simple but very exciting maneuvers. A couple of steep turns with an angle of 60 to 80 degrees, and after a couple of sample turns, our captain gave the magic announcement throughout the intercom. You have the flight controls, and now it was my turn. In a common airline, you normally do the turns between 5 and 30 degrees of inclination at the most. In a training plane, when you're getting your license, you have to practice these turns at a 45-degree angle. But to do them at an inclination of almost 90 degrees is quite an experience and an incredible sensation of speed, since when you turn the plane on its longitudinal axis to make the turn, our lifting force is divided between a vertical component and a horizontal component. And as the force of gravity remains constant but increases the centrifugal force, we have to increase the power of the aircraft to increase its speed and thus its lifting force until it maintains a balance between the vertical component and the force of gravity. Or in other words, to complete our turn without losing altitude while turning the plane. But with speeding up the plane to make this maneuver, plus the effect of the centrifugal force, we also increase a well-known force that basically multiplies our weight by X factor. These are known as G-forces. Every maneuver has an effect on the physical forces received by the plane and its occupants. This plane is designed to receive forces of up to 8 and minus 4 Gs. That means your weight is multiplied or divided by any of these numbers. And even though these steep turns were becoming very exciting, now was the moment to try something even wilder. After a round of samples that the captain performed for me, it was my turn to try my very own barrel rolls. To perform this maneuver successfully, I had to reduce the angle of attack to descend a bit and gain speed. Once reaching 250 knots, I needed to quickly increase the pitch of the plane to 30 degrees above the horizon. And in this precise moment, I also had to turn with all my force to either my right or my left to get into a 360-degree longitudinal rotation, which creates a very unique and thrilling sensation. After a while of going round and round and making many aerobatics, it was time to go back to the airport. But before landing, we decided that it was a good idea to make a low pass over the airport's runway and the airplane exhibition that I have just visited a few hours before. And so, in a very Tom Cruise style in the film that defined many aviators' lives, Top Gun, I was getting to the end of one of the nicest and most amazing experiences which previous to this point in my life I thought was unachievable. And now, thanks to Mikfluke, it is one more fulfilled dream that I will never forget.
Amigos, pues ya llegamos a tierra. No tengo palabras para describirles lo impresionante que está esta experiencia. En verdad está increíble. Y pues bueno, lo fantástico de todo esto es que lo pueden hacer ustedes también. Es muy fácil, tienen que ir a MiGFlug.com. Ahí van a encontrar toda la información y no es caro. Eso es lo más impresionante de todo. Yo de niño me imaginaba algún día volando en estas cosas cuando fuera millonario. Todavía no soy millonario, pero ya cumplí este sueño. Y espero que les haya gustado muchísimo este video. Yo por lo pronto me despido. Si les gustaría ver más videos como estos, experiencias así, visitar Chernobyl, ir a Corea del Norte, cosas así raras, exóticas y extravagantes, comenten aquí abajo chicharrón con queso. Y si hay mucho chicharrón con queso, claro que lo haré para ustedes. Les mando un besote a todas, un abrazo a todos y nos vemos en el próximo video. ¡Woo!